Hello, my name is April Elias, and today I'm going to show you how I craft my prompts to learn AI or just about anything at all that it is that I'm trying to learn. This video is great for beginners, and it's also great for people who are advanced users because I'm going to be sharing some tips and tricks to help you learn a little bit more quickly and be a little bit more efficient with using AI. And hopefully this helps reduce some of the overwhelm and anticipation that comes along with using AI. So I'm just going to go ahead, jump in and start sharing my screen. In this example, I have Claude up. And now I like all of the AIs and I use them, meaning I like ChatGPT, Grok, Gemini, Claude in particular, I use a little bit more often depending on what it is exactly that I'm trying to do. So in preparation for this video, I simply asked Claude to produce me a prompt that's good for beginners to use. And the reason that I asked that is because this is a good way to demonstrate the context of the prompt or the structure of the prompt in order for you to get a successful result without a bunch of back and forth and just spending time in endless chats trying to train it on what it is that you'd like it to produce. So this demonstrates that core framework, which is really helpful. And a simple way to use it is just by saying, I need help with whatever it is that you need help with. My goal is to, and then you, of course, describe your goal. But what you're doing by asking it for help is you're already giving it the prompt of saying, I need you to educate me. I need you to assist me. So it's already calculating that. And then also, the third piece here, please make it simple or creative or detailed. And when you ask it to make it simple, I like to go a little bit further and say simple enough for a kindergartner, a third grader, a fifth grader, a middle schooler, a high schooler to understand. Again, it just depends on what it is that you're asking of the AI. And then also say, who will use it, how it will be used, if you know all of that. And then if you have an example, this is an optional piece. It just contributes to the successful result. But if you have an example of what you're looking for, it just gives you another data point to go ahead and pull back exactly what you're asking for. And this is just general, and this is to demonstrate that framework. And then I went in and I said, give me some advice or give me an example and fill in those blanks. So it automatically went in and filled in the blanks. I need help writing a cover letter for a marketing job. My goal is to stand out from other applicants to get the interview. And please make it professional and suitable for a mid-sized tech company. And here's an example of what I'm looking for. And then it goes to describe that. Now, Claude may have automatically chose this type of example based on the way that I've been using Claude. I've been in talent acquisition. I've been a headhunter for 20 plus years, and I've always been really tech savvy and using tech to help leverage my talent acquisition and talent engagement pursuits. People I'm looking for, they're not applying to jobs. I have to go out, find them, engage them, and attract them to the opportunity. And so I use AI to help and assist me do with a lot of the tasks or the efforts or initiatives that I'm trying to accomplish. So it may have chose this example because of the way I use Claude for most things. And then I went ahead and I gave it something specific, make it real estate investing specific. And then it went in to adjust it and say, I need help finding my first real estate rental investment, generate passive income, make it simple and suitable for someone with 50,000 to invest. It went ahead and listed the geography, which is great. And then here's an example of what I'm looking for. And so it also said this is best for a beginner who, you can say, I don't have any properties and I need it, super simple. And that's how you can use a prompt to get the most accurate type of result that you're looking for. I went a step further, and if you have some type of mentor or thought leader that you follow or admire, or you'd like to use their style or influence or way of doing things, it could be, I use Pace Morby in this example, and you could use, if you're marketing, maybe like an Alex Hormozy, or if it's fitness or whatever, anyone that you follow for any reason. And if you're trying to use that as inspiration in your request, you can absolutely do that, and it'll tailor it to that ask, and it'll save you a ton of time. I often use the Alex Hormozy example, but then I soften it up so it doesn't make it obvious that I used AI to be Alex Hormozy like, but that's one of my favorite ones to use too. But for the Pace Morby real estate investing one, I just simply said his name, and Claude was able to pull back that he teaches creative financing. And so it specifically tailored that to say, I need help with understanding creative financing for real estate like Pace Morby. And my goal is to find my first property using subject to or seller finance without using a bank. Please make it simple and suitable for a complete beginner who has no properties and good communication skills. So if you're someone who has good communication skills, this will go ahead and tailor it for you to give you things to in the bottom here. It speaks to that a little bit. How to find a motivated seller. If you have good communication skills, you'd likely be able to engage motivated sellers. But if you're someone who's like, I'm more behind the scenes, more of an integrator type or operations type, you can do that too. Whatever suits your personality and the use for the particular prompt. But I thought that was just a good example to give some people ideas of how they can structure their prompts, because it is the art of the prompt. I've been using Boolean search logic for a really long time in my recruiting efforts, actually ever since the 90s, which is a long time for me to admit that I've been using that. And so I feel like it complements using AI nicely, because I'm always thinking about what's the quality of my ask? What's the quality of the ask of this data that I'm trying to query? What am I actively filtering out? What am I letting in? Because sometimes what happens is, trying to get so precise, things are left out that you'd actually prefer to have included. So you just need to think about that a little bit more 360. And I feel like those are some things that contribute to becoming a really good prompt engineer. Not that that's your aspiration, but that's what I do. And I have a passion for it, and I love it because it's just fun and you can be creative and ask cool things. I do have another use case in here, and it's specifically around Manus, and that's actually what inspired me to do this video this morning. I saw a question about how to successfully use Manus, and I believe it was this one. Here it is. Yeah. So I saw someone ask this question in our group, and this was my advice. I literally just went into Claude, and the reason that I use Claude for this over ChatGPT or Grok or Gemini or anything else is because I already know that Manus is built on Claude. So it's built on Anthropic's Claude, which is what we're in here. And there's like 29 other tools that go into Manus, but I thought this would be a good place to ask. And then you can also ask this in the specific tool, because that tool knows how to use itself and to guide you there. And that's a huge shortcut, in my opinion, and it saved me tons of time. But I asked Claude to write me a clear, concise prompt to put in Manus AI to have, it doesn't care that I had a typo there, Manus to help me learn the best ways to use Manus. So then it produced this wonderful prompt that is short, clear, and concise, exactly what I asked for. And then I'll just take a quick look at this and say, does this accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish? Yes, I want to use Manus, the capabilities effectively, and I will benefit from learning its core functions because that will help me interact with it better. And then show me example of well-formatted prompts. So then I get an idea of its context frame that we can, how much we can put in there. So each one of these different platforms has a context window, and some of them are more limited and some of them are more expansive. Manus is a good example of that. It's a little bit more expansive, but it still has limits. I wouldn't ask it to do 30 things, but you could probably ask it to do a few more things at once than you could anything else. All of these tools are getting better and better. Their context windows are getting bigger and bigger. But it's good to know that before you start using it. Otherwise, you start getting all of these weird results, and then it'll say, oh, yeah, I forgot that you said that. And you just kind of have a little bit of a back and forth with it. So to avoid all of that, this is a good strategy to execute. And then I do want it to outline the common mistakes people make when using it, because I want to be able to avoid that. And then suggest specific ways that I can phrase requests for. And if I'm not interested in creative writing, problem solving, learning new topics, or data analysis, I can put it in there and modify this exact prompt to use in Manus, and then I'll have a more accurate result for my intent, and then demonstrate how I can build upon our conversation and share any tips for getting more precise and useful responses. So some of these models you get more precise and useful responses if you ask it a question first. You could say, I'm interested in learning X, Y, and Z. Can you help me with that? Or can you help me learn whatever? And then it'll say yes. And it's already calibrating, right? It's already getting to work to produce results for you in anticipation of what you're getting ready to ask based on that subject. There have been some, I guess, studies to show that you can get a 30% increased accuracy response when you do that and when you ask questions up front. And I think that's just kind of an interesting insight. But that's one tip that I certainly employ, is to just go ahead and ask that AI, hey, what's the best way for me to use this particular platform? And I started to figure that out when OpenAI let us in the playground before like ChatGPT was like fully released. I was in there just geeking out. I don't know, it was a couple years ago. I have an article on my LinkedIn that I pinned that I wrote a couple months after I was in the playground just playing around. And I was like, wow, you go down this rabbit hole and you're like, this is really cool. But I also quickly noticed the hallucination, meaning it was like making things up that it thought was relevant to what I was asking. And it's just, I don't know, it's I had the idea to say, you have all of this knowledge, even though it was only to a certain date at that time. It was like to the 2 years prior or something, the data set was only good to. I was like, well, this probably knows how I should use it. So I started asking it, what are the best ways to use this? How can I be most effective? And because I've used that Boolean search logic for so long in my recruiting efforts, that's another good foundation if you already have that from using it in whatever capacity that you're in, or if you've been SQL or SQL, if you're used to writing those search strings, that gives you, or strings at all, that gives you a bit of an advantage in the beginning. But again, this is an easy concept for just about anyone to grasp, and you learn the most by doing. And so I would just encourage you to get in there and do that. And I started learning from ChatGPT how to use ChatGPT. And then I started asking questions that were just a little bit more interesting. I would say things like, what is it about you, or how to use you, that is unique or interesting or innovative, that's not commonly known, or that most people don't know. And that way you can kind of get like some hidden information. And then also one other thing that I like to do is when I have a prompt or an idea for a prompt, I'll go back and I'll ask just one or two times, is this the most clear and concise and optimized way for me to ask this question or to craft this prompt? Or I'll say something like, how can you think about this more 360, right? And so, and sometimes it'll come back and it'll say, no, this is already optimized, like right from the start. Or it'll say, oh, you're right, good point, and it'll fix it. So I like to do that just a time or two, just to really tune things in, because I'm a fan of doing the extra work on the front end, so I don't have to do as much work on the back end, because you're going to spend the time either way. I'd rather spend a little bit more time on the front end tuning things in. And then there was another example in here. I don't know if it's in this flow or this chat that I went in, but I thought it was really interesting that oh yeah, this is where it is. So I was like, one of my foundations and interest is because of my use of Boolean search logic for so long in identifying passive talent. And I was wondering how old Boolean search was. I've been using it since the 90s. And I realized, and I learned this morning, fun fact, that it was actually from the 1800s. And then I noticed that in the 1930s and 40s that Claude Shannon applies Boolean logic to electronic circuits. And then I was like, I wonder if that's why Claude is named Claude. And so I asked that, is that why you're named Claude? And it said no, but then it actually said yes here, because it was just missing the middle name. And it says, I'm named Claude after Claude Elwood Shannon, who was indeed a pioneering figure in applying Boolean logic to electronic circuits and considered the father of information theory, which I think is very interesting that Anthropic did that. And I just thought it was just a cool little like synergy there. And then it says, my creator Anthropic named or chose the name as a nod to Shannon's contributions towards information theory and computer science. So again, just a little fun fact there. And this is the way that oh, actually, let me share with you guys. I don't know if I have it in here. But all of the AI tools that I'm learning how to use, like I said, I ask the AI how to learn it, or I ask the AI the best way for me to learn it, and it helps me learn quickly. And when it provides me instructions, I say in my prompt, provide me step by step, clear, complete, concise instructions. Don't assume that I know anything, assume that I know nothing, and you need to describe everything to me. And usually what I do is I take that prompt, I throw it in a Google Doc, and I put check boxes on it, and I just check it off as I go down and I build the workflow. Because I like Grok for this particular one is to help me streamline my workflows, because I will actually tell Grok, you're Elon Musk and you're building this product, because what he does is he gets a lot of really amazing things out to market or active and going, and it's just a lean type of process to where the mistakes are found early on, but in a small, like kind of a smaller frame, so you can iterate a little bit more quickly, and then you can solve the challenges a little bit more quickly without going through this huge architecture and being like, oh my gosh, where's it broken? So I just love that approach. And so I'll go into Grok and I'll ask Grok to go ahead and create it like Elon Musk would take a product to market. And so when I ask Grok that, I say, give me these clear, concise instructions. But what I also ask Grok to do is do some deep research. And this is what I'm trying to accomplish. And it's specifically within talent acquisition for my use case, with the sourcing, the engagement, the attraction, and the actual acquisition of talent. And that's where I stop. Like, I'm not HR, I'm not onboarding, I'm not doing any of that. That's that's exactly what I'm looking for. So I'll get these instructions and I'll get these recommendations on these tools to use. And so right now I'm using Lindy, I'm using N88, a little bit of Make, and maybe some other things kind of sprinkled in there. But I found that some of these tools are so new that there's not a lot of good YouTube videos on how to have them interact with like my Go High Level, or with, just with each other, and to solve specific use cases. So because of that, I ask AI to help me with that. And then when I start to build and try to figure out what works, and then I test and what's broken, or what's working well and what's not, which I will get more into documenting my journey on that for anyone who's interested. I'll share it all. And but what I have found, and this is just something to note and just try to not be frustrated, is when you get those instructions, like if one of the other AIs, and I've asked multiple AIs to provide me instructions for like Lindy example, and I've been playing around with that maybe 3 or 4 weeks, is some of the instructions aren't exactly what you see on the screen. But the way that I solve that problem is I just take a screenshot. Actually, let me just open this back up. The way I solve that problem is I just take a screenshot, and then I put it into the AI, and I'm like, this is the error that I've run up into. And then it'll say, oh, I see where you're at right now. And then it'll help me troubleshoot. And I'm able to troubleshoot and figure things out a lot more quickly. I'm someone who needs to get in, get my hands in there, figure things out, make mistakes, figure out, why does it work? Why doesn't it work? And is that the smartest way to do it? And I have no problems figuring it out, like for myself on my own desk. And I'm happy to do that and share my journey in how I'm doing that. And it helps me understand what's possible. I love the strategy and the visionary piece of it, but I also like to be in the position of, if I need something fixed, I need to be able to fix it myself. But I'd prefer for other people to implement it and integrate it. But it's kind of a weird kind of like fence that I'm on in between, visionary and actually integrating. So that's just a little sidebar. If any of you have any questions, please let me know. I would love to hear how you're using AI. I'd love to hear your use cases. I'd love to hear any tips and tricks that you figured out. The last tip that I'll leave you with, which is a super impactful productivity hack, in my opinion, is talking to text to the AI. I get tired of typing and I get lazy and I'm like, oh, I've said enough. I'll just hit enter. So what I've done is, of course, on my phone, I have ChatGPT that I could talk to. You can talk to Perplexity, you can talk to Grok, you can talk to anything. So I do a lot of it from my phone. But then when I'm working on my computer, what I did was I just created this shortcut on my Mac to where my world button, I just hit my world button once and then my microphone turns on and then I can just talk into it. And so I get a lot more out. And what happens is able to provide a lot more detail, and that contributes to the quality of my prompt, and that contributes to the quality of my end result. So hopefully all that was helpful. And again, reach out if you have any questions, and I hope you guys build a lot of amazing, cool things. And I also hope that you learn a lot of really awesome things by playing around with AI.